Detroit's business district is gridlocked. Nathaniel Brooks is walking fast because in less than an hour his mechanical certification exam begins across downtown. Miss it, and the next chance won't come for 4 months. He spent half a year studying under the dim lights outside a homeless shelter for this one shot at rebuilding his life. Then, traffic ahead suddenly freezes. In the middle of the intersection sits a $5 million hypercar, stalled in traffic, while an angry billionaire in a suit argues with security. A tow truck slowly backs toward the car. Nathaniel hears it instantly. The faint clicking of a hybrid system shutting down. If they tow it, the drivetrain will be destroyed. Drivers shout. Pedestrians keep walking. Nathaniel checks the time, knowing stopping could cost him everything. Still, he steps forward and says quietly, "I can fix it." What he doesn't realize is that those 4 words will change everything. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The early morning light filtered through the shelter's dusty windows, casting long shadows across the workshop corner where Nathaniel Brooks worked. His weathered hands moved with practiced precision over a child's bicycle chain. The worn tools, collected from dumpsters and garage sales, lay organized on a tattered cloth beside him. "Almost done, Marcus," Nathaniel said softly to the 10-year-old boy, watching intently. The child's eyes sparkled with hope as Nathaniel threaded the chain back onto the sprockets. "See how the links connect? That's the heart of it." The workshop corner wasn't much, just a small space Mrs. Alvarez had allowed him to use in the shelter's utility room. But to the neighborhood, it had become something of a sanctuary, a place where broken things found new life. The chain clicked into place. Nathaniel gave the pedal a slow turn, testing the movement. "There we go. Good as new." He wiped his hands on a rag and smiled as Marcus bounced excitedly. "Thanks, Mr. Brooks." The boy grabbed the handlebars. "Mom said she could pay you next week when she—" "No need," Nathaniel interrupted gently. "Just keep those grades up like you promised." As Marcus wheeled the bike toward the door, Mrs. Alvarez appeared in the doorway. Her kind face carried its usual mix of warmth and worry. "Nathaniel, you're still here. It's almost 9. He nodded, already gathering his tools. "Just finished up Marcus's bike. Chain was about to snap completely." "Always fixing something." She shook her head, but her eyes were fond. "But today's not just any day. You have the certification exam at 2 o'clock. This could change everything." Nathaniel's hands slowed as he carefully wrapped each tool in the cloth. "I know. Been studying every night. 3 months of preparation." Mrs. Alvarez leaned against the doorframe. "With your skills, you should have had this certification years ago." "Maybe." Nathaniel didn't mention how he'd once designed entire engine systems, how he'd led teams of engineers before everything fell apart. Those memories belonged to a different life. An elderly woman shuffled past the doorway, then stopped and peered in. "Oh, Mr. Brooks, my heater's working perfectly now. First warm night's sleep I've had in weeks." Her smile was grateful. "Let me give you something for your trouble." "Please, Mrs. Thompson." "It was nothing." Nathaniel raised his hands. "Just a loose connection. That's all." Mrs. Alvarez watched the exchange with knowing eyes. "Nothing," he says. "He spent 2 hours in your room last night, Mrs. Thompson, after working all day at the recycling center." Nathaniel tucked his exam papers into his worn jacket pocket. The edges were soft from countless readings. "I should get going. Long walk downtown." "You could take the bus," Mrs. Alvarez suggested. "Not for the first time. Need to save the fare." Nathaniel shouldered his small bag. "Besides, I like walking. Helps me think." As he stepped out into the morning air, the familiar sounds of the neighborhood surrounded him. Children shouting on their way to school, buses grinding past, car horns in the distance. Nathaniel fell into an easy stride, his mind already shifting to the exam material. Each passing car was a lesson, a reminder. A rattling Honda needed valve adjustment. The whining Toyota probably had a failing serpentine belt. The diesel truck's irregular idle spoke of fuel injection issues. After 30 years of working with engines, their voices were as clear as human speech to him. He passed the auto parts store where he sometimes helped the young mechanic Tommy diagnose difficult problems. The corner garage where he'd once spotted a potentially dangerous brake failure just by the sound it made. Small kindnesses, small fixes. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but he'd never lost his need to help, to repair, to make things work again. The exam papers crinkled in his pocket. 3 months of studying whenever he could. Early mornings, late nights, between odd jobs and repairs. The certification wouldn't restore his old life, but it might open a door to something stable. Something that could get him out of the shelter and back on his feet. As he approached downtown, the buildings grew taller, the cars newer and more expensive. Here, people hurried past without meeting his eyes. He'd become invisible, just another homeless man on the streets. They couldn't see the engineer's mind behind his worn clothes, the expert's knowledge in his calloused hands. The traffic grew heavier as he neared the business district. Nathaniel checked his watch, plenty of time to reach the testing center. But then he noticed something unusual ahead. Cars were backing up, horns blaring in frustration. People were getting out of their vehicles, pointing at something. The traffic had completely stopped across several blocks. In the center of the chaos, something sleek and powerful caught the morning sun. A vehicle that looked more like a spacecraft than a car. Even from a distance, Nathaniel recognized the distinctive profile of a multi-million-dollar hypercar, the kind of machine that usually only existed in magazines and dreams. He drew closer, his trained ear already picking up the subtle wrongness in the engine's silence. Other pedestrians gathered on the sidewalk, phones raised to capture the spectacle. But where they saw an exotic car making a scene, Nathaniel saw something else entirely. A sophisticated piece of engineering with a very specific problem. The traffic continued to build, tempers flaring in the morning heat. The hypercar sat immobile, its perfectly engineered lines somehow making it look even more helpless in its stillness. The hypercar sat like an alien spacecraft in the middle of the intersection, its matte black carbon fiber body reflecting the late morning sun. Its gull-wing doors stretched upward in defeat, exposing the leather and carbon fiber cockpit. Around it, traffic snarled in every direction. A man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit paced beside the vehicle, his expensive shoes clicking against the asphalt. Damian Caldwell's face was flushed with anger as he jabbed his finger at his phone. "I don't care what their schedule is," he shouted into the device. "This is a $5 million vehicle. Get their technicians here now." He ran his free hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up in frustration. A woman in a sharp business suit stood nearby, her tablet computer balanced professionally in one arm as she spoke in measured tones to someone on her phone. Lauren Pierce maintained her composure despite the chaos surrounding them. "Yes, I understand the factory team is in Chicago," she said calmly. "But Mr. Caldwell's schedule today is absolutely critical. Is there any way to—" She paused, listening. 4 hours? I see. 3 burly men in dark suits formed a perimeter around the car, keeping the growing crowd of onlookers at bay. Their earpieces and rigid postures marked them as private security. Behind them, phones recorded the scene as pedestrians gathered to witness the spectacle of a billionaire's very public breakdown. "Move it out of the street!" someone shouted from a blocked car. "Buy a Toyota next time," another driver yelled, followed by angry honking. Nathaniel stood at the edge of the sidewalk, his eyes moving methodically over the vehicle. The hypercar's hybrid system was legendary, a masterpiece of engineering that combined electric motors with a compact turbine engine. But something in its electronic orchestra had gone terribly wrong. He noticed the subtle signs, the way the dashboard displays flickered before going dark, the faint clicking from the power distribution module, the specific pattern of system failures. His mind assembled the clues like puzzle pieces, forming a clear picture of the cascade failure in the car's brain. The watch on his wrist felt heavy as he checked the time. 1:15 p.m. His certification exam started at 2 hours. Even if he left right now, he'd barely make it across town in time. The exam he'd spent months preparing for, the chance to rebuild his life, it all hung in the balance. A flatbed tow truck backed slowly through the traffic jam, its yellow lights flashing. Nathaniel winced as he watched the operator begin preparing the equipment. The hypercar's complex drivetrain and delicate undertray would never survive a standard towing procedure. The damage could run into hundreds of thousands. "Sir, the tow truck is here," Lauren announced to Caldwell, who had finally stopped pacing. "This is ridiculous," Caldwell snapped. "This car was perfect yesterday. Perfect. Now it's just dead?" He glared at the vehicle as if it had personally betrayed him. Nathaniel took a deep breath and stepped forward. The nearest security guard immediately moved to intercept him, hand raised. "Sir, please stay back," the guard ordered firmly. "I need to speak to Mr. Caldwell," Nathaniel said quietly. His worn clothes and unshaven face drew suspicious looks from the security team. "Mr. Caldwell isn't interested in donations at this time," the guard said dismissively. "Please, move along." Lauren Pierce glanced over, her careful attention catching something in Nathaniel's demeanor. But before she could speak, Caldwell's voice cut through the noise. "Oh, what now?" The billionaire turned, his expression hardening as he saw Nathaniel. "I don't have time for this. Clear him out." The guard took Nathaniel's arm, but he stood his ground. "Your car has a cascading failure in the hybrid control system," he said clearly. "If they tow it like that, the drivetrain will be damaged." The guard's grip loosened slightly. Lauren Pierce stepped closer, her head tilted in consideration. "And how exactly would you know that?" Caldwell demanded, more annoyed than curious. "The sequence of the shutdown, the way the displays failed, the clicking from the power distribution module." Nathaniel pointed to each area of the car. "It's a known issue in early production models of this system." Lauren's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Mr. Caldwell, perhaps we should—" "Oh, please," Caldwell interrupted. "He probably read about it online. Some kind of scam." He turned back to his phone. The tow truck operator was hooking up the cables now. Nathaniel watched as they positioned the straps exactly where they would do the most damage. His certification exam waited across town. His future depended on making that appointment. All he had to do was walk away. But he couldn't let them destroy this machine. Not when he knew exactly how to save it. "Mr. Caldwell," he said, his voice carrying clearly despite the traffic noise. The billionaire turned back, irritation written across his face. Nathaniel looked at the hypercar again, his hands already knowing what needed to be done. Then he met Caldwell's impatient stare and said 4 simple words. "I can fix it." The security guards chuckled, exchanging knowing looks. One of them cracked his knuckles, ready to remove this clearly delusional, homeless man. 30 seconds, Damien said suddenly, his voice dripping with skepticism. "Then you're gone." He checked his expensive watch, making a show of timing it. Lauren Pierce stepped closer, her tablet forgotten at her side, as she watched Nathaniel with keen interest. Unlike the others, she noticed his calm confidence, the way his eyes methodically assessed the vehicle's systems. "Can you open the rear access panel?" Nathaniel asked, already kneeling beside the hypercar. His movements were precise, professional. Nothing like the uncertain gestures of someone trying to fake knowledge. Damien scoffed. "You expect me to let you poke around inside a $5 million car?" "The panel behind the right rear wheel," Nathaniel continued patiently. "There's a small lever marked with a yellow triangle." The billionaire's eyebrows rose slightly. That detail wasn't common knowledge. He glanced at Lauren, who gave a subtle nod. "Fine." Damien moved to the back of the car, located the lever, and pulled it. A small carbon fiber panel clicked open. Nathaniel leaned in, his experienced eyes scanning the complex array of electronics and cooling lines. "See this controller here?" He pointed to a small black box nestled deep in the housing. "It's the secondary hybrid management unit. When there's a voltage spike in the primary system, it triggers an emergency shutdown to protect the motors." "And you know this how?" Damien demanded. but there was less edge in his voice now. The sequence of failures. Dashboard went dark first, then the climate control, then the whole system. Nathaniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small multi-tool. The computer thinks there's a critical problem, but it's just a false reading from a sensitive sensor. The crowd had grown larger, phones recording the strange scene of a homeless man apparently lecturing a billionaire about his own hypercar. Some people laughed, expecting security to step in any second. Others watched with genuine curiosity. 20 seconds, Damien announced, though he made no move to stop Nathaniel. With careful movements, Nathaniel reached deep into the housing. His fingers found the reset button by touch alone, hidden where only specialized technicians would know to look. He pressed it for exactly 3 seconds, then released. "Try the ignition," he said. Damien hesitated, then slid into the driver's seat. The interior still smelled of fresh leather and carbon fiber. He pressed the start button, expecting nothing. The dashboard suddenly flickered to life. Lights cascaded across the digital displays as systems came online one by one. Then, with a whir of electric motors and a subtle turbine spin-up, the hybrid power plant awakened. The engine's distinctive sound echoed off the surrounding buildings. The crowd fell silent. Lauren quickly checked the diagnostic readout on her tablet. "All systems normal," she announced, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. "Everything's functioning perfectly." Damien sat frozen in the seat, staring at the fully operational displays. The car that had defeated his entire team and would have required factory technicians to fly in from Chicago had just been fixed in less than 2 minutes by a homeless man with a pocket tool. Scattered applause broke out from the onlookers. Someone whistled. The security guards shifted uncomfortably, no longer sure how to act. Nathaniel closed the access panel with a gentle click and stood up, brushing off his worn jeans. Without waiting for thanks or payment, he turned and began walking away through the parting crowd. "Wait!" Damien called out, climbing from the car. "How did you—" But Nathaniel kept walking, his mind already on his next destination. He glanced at his watch. 1:40 p.m. The certification exam started in 20 minutes, clear across downtown. His chest tightened as he did the math. Even running, he'd never make it in time. The traffic jam was already beginning to clear as cars moved around the now functioning hypercar. Horns honked, no longer in anger, but in celebration of the strange scene they'd just witnessed. Phones kept recording as Nathaniel disappeared down the sidewalk, just another invisible person in the city's flow. Behind him, Lauren Pierce was already typing rapidly on her tablet, her investigative instincts triggered. "Mr. Caldwell, I think you should know something about—" "Not now." Damien cut her off, still staring after Nathaniel with an expression caught between irritation and fascination. The man's knowledge of the car's systems had been too specific, too confident. No amateur could have diagnosed and fixed such a complex problem so quickly. The security team stood awkwardly, their earlier dismissiveness now seeming foolish. The tow truck operator was already packing up his equipment, shaking his head in disbelief. Nathaniel walked faster, his worn shoes hitting the pavement with increasing urgency. The exam location was 20 blocks away. He'd spent months preparing for this chance, studying every night after the shelter's lights went out. One certification that could open doors back into the world that had forgotten him. He checked his watch again. 1:42 p.m. The morning's choice was now clear in its consequences. He had fixed an exotic car worth more money than he'd see in several lifetimes, but the cost was the opportunity he'd been counting on for months. Nathaniel's worn shoes pounded against the concrete as he rushed through the downtown streets. His breath came in sharp bursts, dodging around casual pedestrians who barely noticed his desperate pace. 20 blocks had never felt so far. The certification center stood in an aging office building, its brown brick facade a stark contrast to the gleaming towers surrounding it. Nathaniel checked his watch again. 2:07 p.m. His heart sank, but he pushed through the revolving door anyway, clinging to a thread of hope. The lobby's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as he approached the reception desk. A middle-aged woman looked up from her computer, her expression already apologetic before he could speak. "The Mechanical Systems Certification Exam?" Nathaniel asked, trying to catch his breath. "I'm registered for today's session." The receptionist checked her screen. "Brooks? Nathaniel?" When he nodded, she sighed. "I'm sorry, sir. The exam began at 2 p.m. sharp. We don't allow late entries once the doors are sealed." "Please," Nathaniel said quietly. "I've been preparing for months. There was an emergency situation." "It's a standardized state certification," she explained, her tone professional but firm. "The testing protocols are very strict. We have to maintain complete security and timing consistency." Nathaniel placed his worn study materials on the counter. "Could I speak to the supervisor?" "I can explain the circumstances. The testing administrator cannot interrupt an active exam session." She glanced at his shabby clothes, then back to his face with a hint of sympathy. "The next testing date is in 4 months, but—" She trailed off, both of them knowing the unspoken truth. The exam fee was substantial, and it had taken Nathaniel half a year to save for this attempt. He stood there for a moment, shoulders slumped but dignity intact. "I understand. Thank you for checking." The receptionist watched him gather his papers, struck by his calm acceptance, where most people would have argued or complained. "Good luck, Mr. Brooks." Nathaniel nodded and walked back outside. The afternoon sun felt harsh now as he sat heavily on the building's stone steps. Around him, the city continued its normal rhythm. People hurrying to meetings, cars honking in traffic, life moving forward while his own path seemed permanently stalled. He pulled out the study guide he'd read so many times the pages were falling apart. All those nights studying by the shelter's security lights, practicing procedures in his head, dreaming of a chance to prove himself again. Gone because he'd stopped to help someone who probably wouldn't remember his face tomorrow. Meanwhile, 15 blocks away, Damian Caldwell sat in his now functioning hypercar, reviewing footage from the vehicle's security cameras. Lauren stood outside his open door, her tablet displaying rapidly scrolling information. "Play it again," Damian commanded, studying the screen built into his dashboard. The video showed Nathaniel's precise movements as he diagnosed and repaired the fault. How did he know exactly where that reset switch was? Even my own mechanics didn't catch it. Lauren's fingers flew across her tablet. "I'm finding something interesting, sir." Facial recognition got a match. She turned the screen toward him. Nathaniel Brooks, former senior engineer at Advanced Mobility Systems. He led their hybrid powertrain development team 7 years ago. Advanced Mobility? Damian's eyebrows rose. They developed half the patents we use in our current vehicles. What's their chief engineer doing homeless on the streets? "He wasn't fired," Lauren continued reading. "He just disappeared. Stopped coming to work during a major project. The company listed him as having resigned, but there's no formal resignation letter in their records." Damian frowned at the security footage again. The man's movements showed years of expertise, the kind that couldn't be faked. What else? Medical records from that time period show multiple hospital visits, but they're sealed, and his bank accounts were completely drained shortly after. Lauren looked up. "Something happened to him, Mr. Caldwell. Something that took him from the top of the industry to the streets. And yet he still stopped to fix a stranger's car." Damian mused, remembering how Nathaniel had walked away without asking for anything in return. "Where did he go after he left here?" Lauren pulled up another screen. Traffic cameras tracked him heading toward the State Certification Center on 8th Street. "There's a mechanical systems exam today." She checked the time, which started 7 minutes ago. The exam he missed because he stopped to help me, Damian realized, an unfamiliar feeling of responsibility settling in his chest. He pressed the intercom button. "Thompson, bring the car around." Back at the certification center, Nathaniel finally stood up from the steps. He carefully tucked his study materials into his worn backpack, each movement deliberate and controlled. A nearby businesswoman clutched her purse tighter as she hurried past him, another small reminder of his invisible status in society. He began walking back toward the shelter, his steps heavy, but his head still held high. The afternoon crowd parted around him automatically, the way it always did around people society preferred not to see. A few coins jingled in his pocket, his entire savings after paying the exam fee. The sound of a vehicle pulling alongside him made him tense slightly, aware of how vulnerable he was on the streets. A black SUV with tinted windows rolled to a stop, keeping pace with his steps. The black SUV's door swung open, and Damien Caldwell stepped out onto the sidewalk. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the concrete as he approached Nathaniel. The contrast between them was stark. Damien in his tailored charcoal suit, Nathaniel in his worn jacket and faded jeans. "Mr. Brooks," Damien called out, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to commanding attention. Nathaniel stopped, but didn't turn immediately. His shoulders tensed, preparing for accusation or conflict. When he finally faced Damien, his expression remained neutral, guarded. "That was quite a display back there," Damien said, studying him with renewed interest. "Most certified mechanics wouldn't have known about that secondary controller." Lauren Pierce emerged from the SUV's passenger side, tablet in hand. She stood slightly behind Damien, her professional demeanor softened by genuine curiosity. "Why did you help?" Damien asked directly. "My security treated you like dirt. Most people would have walked right by." Nathaniel shifted his backpack, its frayed straps cutting into his shoulder. "The machine needed fixing," he said simply, "and people were stuck in traffic." "That's it?" Damien pressed, not satisfied with the basic answer. "You just fixed a $5 million hypercar because traffic was backed up?" "Machines don't care how much they cost," Nathaniel replied. "They either work or they don't." Damien exchanged a glance with Lauren before continuing. "You've worked with hybrid systems before, advanced ones. That level of knowledge doesn't come from tinkering with bicycles." Nathaniel's eyes flickered briefly to Lauren's tablet, understanding they'd been researching him. "I used to work in engineering," he admitted quietly. "A long time ago." Lauren stepped forward, her voice gentle but professional. "Mr. Brooks, we've confirmed your previous position at Advanced Mobility Systems. Your work on hybrid powertrain development was quite remarkable." The mention of his past seemed to make Nathaniel uncomfortable. He glanced down the street, as if planning an escape route. "That was another life." "It doesn't have to stay in the past," Damien said, his typical impatience tempered by genuine interest. "I own Caldwell Automotive Innovations. We're developing next-generation hybrid systems, and we could use someone with your expertise." A city bus roared past, its diesel engine drowning out the street noise for a moment. Nathaniel watched it go, perhaps thinking of all the times he'd ridden similar buses between the shelter and various day labor sites. "I'm offering you a temporary consulting position," Damien continued. 3 months initial contract. We'll evaluate your current skills, see if you can still contribute at a high level." Nathaniel's expression remained cautious. "Why would you trust someone living in a shelter with your company's technology?" "Because you just fixed a car that stumped our best mechanics," Damien replied, "and because you did it without expecting anything in return." "That kind of integrity is rare," Lauren interjected smoothly. "We can arrange immediate transportation to the facility. There's a corporate housing complex nearby where you could stay during the evaluation period." She tapped her tablet. "The paperwork can be processed today." Nathaniel looked down at his worn clothes, then at the gleaming office buildings around them. "Mr. Caldwell, I appreciate the offer, but—" "You think it's not real," Damien cut in, his tone sharp but not unkind. "You think I'll change my mind once I remember you're homeless. That's not how I operate. I care about results, and you've already shown you can deliver those." A young professional hurried past them on the sidewalk, giving Nathaniel a wide berth, while nodding respectfully to Damien. The moment perfectly illustrated the social divide Nathaniel faced daily. "The position includes a signing bonus," Lauren added, sensing Nathaniel's hesitation. "Enough to cover new clothes and personal necessities. We want you to succeed, Mr. Brooks." Nathaniel's hands, those skilled hands that had fixed countless machines, clenched and unclenched at his sides. And if it doesn't work out? Then you walk away with 3 months' salary and corporate housing experience on your resume, Damien said frankly. But I don't think that's going to happen. Come to headquarters this afternoon. See the facility. Meet the team. Then decide. A street vendor's radio played nearby, its news broadcast discussing Detroit's ongoing economic struggles. The familiar narrative of urban decay and lost opportunities seemed to hang in the air between them. Lauren held out a business card. Our driver can take you there now, Mr. Brooks. Sometimes the hardest part is just walking through the door. Nathaniel took the card, running his thumb over its embossed surface. His eyes moved from the card to the SUV, then to the certification center behind them, where his original plan had fallen apart. One afternoon, he said finally, to see if this is real. Damien nodded, satisfied. Thompson, he called to the driver. Take Mr. Brooks to the main facility. Lauren will handle his clearance. He turned back to Nathaniel. I'll meet you there in an hour. Try not to fix anything too expensive before I arrive. A ghost of a smile crossed Nathaniel's face. The first they'd seen. Lauren opened the SUV's rear door, gesturing for him to enter. As he did, the vehicle's leather interior felt like a time machine, transporting him back to a world he thought he'd lost forever. The glass and steel headquarters of Caldwell Automotive Innovations towered above the Detroit skyline. Inside the main engineering bay, fluorescent lights illuminated rows of prototype vehicles and testing equipment. A group of engineers in pristine lab coats gathered near the entrance, their conversations dropping to whispers as Nathaniel entered alongside Lauren. His worn boots echoed against the polished concrete floor. Several engineers wrinkled their noses at his weathered appearance, while others simply stared. Nathaniel kept his eyes forward, shoulders straight, despite his threadbare jacket. Victor Langley stood at the front of the group, arms crossed over his chest. His pressed lab coat and perfectly arranged ID badge broadcast his senior position. The look he gave Nathaniel was pure skepticism. This is the man who fixed your hypercar? Victor asked as Damien strode in behind them. He doesn't even have proper credentials. He fixed what your team couldn't in under 5 minutes, Damien replied sharply. Everyone, this is Nathaniel Brooks. He'll be evaluating our hybrid propulsion systems. The engineers exchanged uncertain glances. A few pulled out phones, no doubt searching for information about their unexpected visitor. Mr. Brooks will need to prove his capabilities, Victor said, his tone clipped. We can't risk our prototypes based on one lucky repair. Damien's eyes narrowed at the challenge, but he nodded. Fair enough. Show him the Mark 7. The group moved toward a sleek vehicle partially hidden under protective covers. Victor pulled back the material, revealing an experimental hybrid prototype. Its complex array of sensors and modified drivetrain components suggested cutting-edge innovation. This one's been giving us trouble for weeks, an engineer explained. Multiple system failures. We've replaced nearly every component, but it won't maintain stable operation. Nathaniel approached slowly, studying the vehicle's lines. His eyes moved methodically from the front sensors to the rear housing, taking in every detail. The engineers watched, some smirking at his deliberate pace. May I? He asked quietly, gesturing to the diagnostic tablet connected to the car. Victor handed it over reluctantly. The error logs are extensive. There's a timing mismatch, Nathaniel interrupted, his fingers moving across the screen. Your hardware is processing faster than the software expects. It's creating a feedback loop in the power management system. Impossible, Victor scoffed. We've checked all the timing protocols. Nathaniel looked up from the tablet. The individual protocols are correct, but when the systems interact at full load, micro-delays compound. The software compensation isn't scaling properly. His explanation caused several engineers to lean forward, interest replacing their earlier disdain. Victor's frown deepened. Prove it, Victor challenged. Nathaniel nodded. I'll need access to the control parameters, and your help, he added, looking at Victor. The calibration requires precise timing. For a moment, Victor seemed ready to refuse, but Damien's stern look made him reconsider. Fine. What do you need me to do? Over the next 20 minutes, Nathaniel guided Victor through a series of careful adjustments. His instructions were clear and patient, even when Victor questioned each step. Other engineers gathered closer, taking notes as Nathaniel explained the subtle interactions between systems. The software expects linear scaling, Nathaniel said, pointing to a data stream. But the actual response curve is logarithmic under load. We need to adjust the compensation factors. Victor's expertise showed as he quickly grasped the concept. Like a cascade effect. Each minor deviation amplifies the next. Exactly, Nathaniel agreed. Ready for the next sequence? Their collaboration continued, the initial tension gradually giving way to professional focus. Even Victor's skepticism seemed to fade as they worked through the complex calibration process. Finally, Nathaniel stepped back. Try it now. Victor initiated the startup sequence. The prototype's displays flickered to life, systems engaging smoothly. The electric motors hummed, and the hybrid power plant stabilized at idle, something it hadn't done in weeks. Full diagnostic scan, Victor ordered, unable to hide his surprise. A young engineer called out readings. All systems nominal. Power curve is perfect. How did you see this? The machine tells you what's wrong, Nathaniel said quietly. You just have to listen properly. Several engineers were already reviewing the calibration data, discussing the implications. Others watched Nathaniel with new respect, recognizing expertise that went beyond mere technical knowledge. Damien had observed the entire process without comment. Now he stepped forward, gesturing for Nathaniel to follow him toward his private office. The engineers parted to let them pass, their whispered conversations following behind. In Damien's office, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Detroit's industrial district. Nathaniel stood quietly as Damien settled behind his desk. That was impressive work, Damien said, pulling out a contract folder. I'm offering you a 3-month engineering position, starting tomorrow morning. Full benefits, corporate housing, and a salary appropriate for your expertise. He slid the paperwork across the desk. The compensation figures made Nathaniel's eyes widen slightly. The team will take time to accept you, Damien continued frankly. But they can't deny your abilities. Victor's endorsement alone, reluctant as it was, carries significant weight. Nathaniel looked at the contract, then out at the city beyond the windows. Somewhere out there was the shelter where he'd spent his morning fixing a child's bicycle. The distance between that life and this moment felt impossible to measure. This is a real chance, Mr. Brooks, Damien said. What's your answer? The morning sun had barely touched the glass walls of Caldwell Automotive Innovations when Nathaniel arrived. His borrowed clothes, clean khakis and a pressed blue work shirt, felt strange after months of worn garments. Lauren had arranged them along with temporary access credentials that now hung from his belt. The engineering bay hummed with early activity. A few technicians glanced up as he entered, their expressions a mix of curiosity and lingering doubt. Nathaniel made his way to the workstation Lauren had assigned him, a clean desk overlooking the prototype testing area. Victor was already there, reviewing diagnostics from yesterday's calibration. Early starter? He asked, not looking up from his tablet. Old habit, Nathaniel replied, powering up his workstation. The complex engineering software felt both familiar and foreign after his time away. His fingers hesitated briefly over the keyboard before muscle memory took over. We're testing efficiency curves on the Mark 8, Victor said, his tone professional but guarded. Since you solved the 7's timing issues, you might as well look at its successor. The Mark 8 prototype sat in a testing bay, panels removed to expose its sophisticated drivetrain. Nathaniel approached carefully, studying the layout. Several engineers gathered nearby, watching his assessment. The power routing is inefficient, Nathaniel said after a few minutes. You're losing energy in these transfer sequences. He pointed to specific components, explaining how small adjustments could improve performance. A young engineer named Sarah stepped forward. But that's the standard configuration. It's been validated through thousands of tests. Sometimes standards need questioning, Nathaniel replied quietly. He picked up a wrench and gestured to the engine. May I demonstrate? Victor nodded reluctantly. Over the next hour, Nathaniel guided them through a series of minor modifications. His movements were precise, each adjustment made with careful purpose. The watching engineers began taking notes as performance metrics improved steadily. That's impossible, one engineer muttered, as the efficiency readings jumped significantly. The baseline calculations didn't show this potential. Calculations don't always capture real-world interactions, Nathaniel explained. Sometimes you have to feel how the machine wants to work. Victor frowned at this unorthodox approach. Engineering isn't about feelings. It's about precise measurements and proven methodologies. Both have their place, Nathaniel said, continuing his adjustments. The best solutions often come from combining them. By mid-morning, the Mark 8 was showing unprecedented efficiency gains. Word spread through the department, drawing more engineers to observe Nathaniel's methods. Even Victor's skepticism seemed to waver, as the data confirmed each improvement. At lunch, Damien found Nathaniel sitting alone in the company cafeteria, reviewing technical documents while others ate in groups nearby. The billionaire set down his plate and took the seat across from him. The efficiency improvements are impressive, Damien said. But something's been bothering me. Your work history shows you leading major innovations at advanced mobility systems, then nothing. Why did someone with your talents disappear? Nathaniel set down his papers slowly. My sister got sick. Rare form of cancer. The insurance wouldn't cover experimental treatments, so I used my savings. When that ran out, I sold everything else. But surely with your skills, she needed full-time care, Nathaniel continued quietly. I couldn't maintain regular hours. Companies don't hold positions for family emergencies that last months. By the time she passed, I had nothing left. No home, no savings, no current industry contacts. Damien studied him carefully. And you never tried to return? Hard to attend interviews when you're living in a shelter. References don't matter much when you can't afford a phone for callbacks. Nathaniel's tone held no bitterness, just simple facts. So I fixed what I could for people who needed help. Bikes, heaters, anything mechanical. The conversation paused as other engineers walked past, their chatter fading as they noticed Damien sitting there. The billionaire seemed lost in thought, perhaps seeing his new hire in a different light. That afternoon, Nathaniel worked steadily at his station, his pencil moving across engineering paper as he developed a new concept. His design stripped away complexity, focusing on essential functions. Every component served multiple purposes, reducing parts and assembly costs. Engineers passing by paused to study his sketches. The design was unconventional but elegant in its simplicity. It sacrificed premium features for reliability and ease of manufacture. This would never sell to luxury buyers, Victor commented, examining the drawings. It's not meant to, Nathaniel replied, adding final details. This is for people who need affordable transportation to reach jobs, schools, medical care. Communities where a reliable vehicle could change lives. Victor shook his head. The profit margins would be minimal, but the impact wouldn't be, Nathaniel said quietly, gathering his sketches. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the engineering bay as Nathaniel made his way to Damien's office. The CEO was on a phone call, but gestured him in. Nathaniel placed the design drawings carefully on the broad desk. What's this? Damien asked after ending his call. A different approach, Nathaniel explained. A hybrid drivetrain optimized for low production costs instead of maximum performance. Something that could bring reliable transportation to neighborhoods that need it most. Damien picked up the sketches, studying the simplified systems and innovative cost reductions. His expression revealed nothing as he flipped through page after page of detailed technical solutions. The technology could help communities like the one that helped me survive, Nathaniel said softly. People who can't afford luxury, but deserve dependability. The executive conference room hummed with quiet tension as Damien studied the design sketches spread across the polished table. Department heads and senior engineers sat silently, watching their CEO's reaction. Nathaniel stood near the wall-mounted display screen, his borrowed clothes a stark contrast to the others' expensive suits. "Walk us through it again," Damien said, tapping the central diagram. "Why eliminate the regenerative brake optimization system?" "Because it adds $3,000 in components to save perhaps $200 in annual fuel costs," Nathaniel explained. "For working families, the upfront cost matters more than marginal efficiency gains." Victor leaned forward, frowning. "But that system is central to our hybrid technology advantage." "In luxury vehicles, yes," Nathaniel acknowledged. "But this design uses a simplified regenerative system that costs a fifth as much. It captures 80% of the energy at 20% of the price." Lauren, sitting near Damien, nodded thoughtfully. "The maintenance costs would be significantly lower, too." "Exactly," Nathaniel continued. "Every component serves multiple functions. The computer control system is streamlined. The battery pack is smaller but more than adequate for daily commuting. We're not trying to win races. We're trying to help people reach their jobs reliably." One of the executives snorted. "The profit margins would be terrible. Our brand is built on premium performance." "Which is why we could launch this under a separate brand," Lauren suggested. "Position it as practical transportation that happens to use hybrid technology, not as a luxury statement." Damien stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the Detroit skyline. The setting sun painted the city in shades of orange and purple. "The development costs would still be substantial," he said finally. "And there's no guarantee the market exists." "I lived in that market," Nathaniel said quietly. "I saw single mothers missing job interviews because their unreliable cars broke down. Elderly people choosing between vehicle repairs and medicine. Students dropping out of technical programs because they couldn't afford transportation." The room fell silent. Lauren watched Damien's back, noting the slight tension in his shoulders. 2 weeks, Damien said suddenly, turning around. "Build me a working prototype in 2 weeks. If it performs as promised, we'll consider moving forward." The next morning, a small corner of the engineering bay was cleared for Nathaniel's project. Lauren had quietly recruited 3 junior engineers who believed in the concept. Sarah from drivetrain development, Marcus from electrical systems, and Raj from software integration. "We'll need to fabricate custom housings," Sarah said, reviewing the designs. "The standard components won't work with these modifications." "I can help with that," Marcus offered. "My uncle owns a machine shop. He'll prioritize our parts if I ask." They worked through that first day in focused silence, each tackling different aspects of the prototype. Nathaniel moved between workstations, answering questions and suggesting refinements. His calm confidence gradually spread to the team. By day 3, the basic drivetrain layout was taking shape on the test bench. Victor occasionally walked past, studying their progress with measured skepticism. Other engineers began stopping by during breaks, intrigued by the unconventional approach. "The control system is beautiful in its simplicity," Raj commented on day 5, testing his software modifications. "We're using maybe 30% of the normal code base, but it's more robust because there's less that can go wrong." Lauren visited regularly, bringing coffee and handling administrative obstacles. When parts were delayed, she expedited shipping. When they needed extra lab time, she adjusted schedules. Her quiet support kept the project moving forward. On day 8, they encountered their first major setback. The power distribution system wasn't maintaining stable voltage under load. The team worked through the night, reorganizing components until they found a solution. "This is why expensive systems use dedicated power conditioning," Victor remarked, watching their struggles. "Or it's why we need to think differently," Nathaniel responded, sketching a new circuit layout. "Sometimes the best solution isn't adding complexity, it's reconsidering basic assumptions." His alternative approach worked perfectly, using standard parts in an innovative configuration. Victor said nothing, but his expression showed reluctant respect. By day 12, the prototype was nearly complete. They mounted the drivetrain in a stripped-down test vehicle, a basic sedan donated from the company's test fleet. The exterior was scratched and dented, but Nathaniel saw beauty in its purposeful functionality. The final assembly took 2 more days of intense work. The team barely spoke, communicating through gestures and shared understanding as they connected the last components. Even the usual shop noise seemed muted, as if the entire engineering department was holding its breath. On the morning of day 15, they rolled the prototype onto the testing track. Lauren stood beside Damien in the observation room, while Nathaniel took the driver's seat. The vehicle looked ordinary from the outside, exactly as intended. Nathaniel turned the key. The engine started smoothly, the hybrid system engaging without any luxury vehicle's typical electronic display. He accelerated slowly at first, then with growing confidence as all readings remained stable. For the next hour, they put the prototype through increasingly demanding tests: acceleration, braking, efficiency, thermal management. Everything performed at or above specifications. The simplified systems worked together flawlessly. When Nathaniel finally parked the car, a small crowd had gathered. Engineers muttered among themselves, studying performance data on tablets. Victor stood slightly apart, arms crossed but nodding slightly. Damien walked slowly around the vehicle, running his hand along its humble exterior. "Production cost estimate?" he asked. 40% below our cheapest current model," Lauren replied, checking her notes. "With potential for further reductions at volume. Maintenance requirements?" "Minimal," Nathaniel said. "Most repairs can be done with basic tools and skills. We focused on durability over features." Damien nodded slowly, then straightened his jacket. "I'm meeting with the investment board tomorrow morning," he announced. "I want this prototype ready for demonstration. Lauren, prepare the market analysis and cost projections." The team shared quick looks of surprise and hope. Nathaniel watched Damien walking away, wondering if the billionaire truly understood how many lives this vehicle could change. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Caldwell Automotive's top-floor boardroom, illuminating a long table surrounded by men and women in expensive suits. Their attention focused on the simple prototype vehicle specifications displayed on the massive screen. Nathaniel stood beside the podium, wearing a borrowed navy suit that Lauren had insisted on. His hands were clean, but still showed the calluses of recent mechanical work. 20 pairs of eyes studied him with mixed curiosity and skepticism. "The drivetrain represents a complete redesign of hybrid technology priorities," Nathaniel explained, his quiet voice steady. "Instead of maximizing performance metrics, we focused on durability, accessibility, and cost reduction." A silver-haired investor leaned forward. "And you achieved 40% cost reduction without sacrificing reliability?" "Actually," Damien interrupted from his position at the head of the table, "final projections show 43% reduction." He nodded to Nathaniel. "Show them the maintenance accessibility." Nathaniel advanced to the next slide, displaying the vehicle's simplified internal layout. "Most repairs can be performed with basic tools. We eliminated specialized diagnostic equipment requirements wherever possible. The design allows local mechanics to service these vehicles without expensive training or proprietary systems." "But will people buy it?" asked a woman in a sharp red blazer. "The market expects hybrid vehicles to include luxury features." "That's exactly why this opportunity exists," Damien replied. "We've been ignoring an enormous untapped market. Working families who need reliable transportation, but can't afford current hybrid options." He gestured to Lauren, who distributed detailed market analysis folders. "Our research shows strong demand potential in urban and suburban areas where commute distances strain family budgets," Lauren explained. "Initial surveys indicate significant interest at our projected price point, particularly among households currently struggling with older, unreliable vehicles." Victor, standing near the back wall, stepped forward. "As senior engineering director, I initially had reservations about this approach." He paused, glancing at Nathaniel. "However, The prototype has demonstrated exceptional performance stability. The engineering is elegantly minimalist while maintaining core functionality. The investors flipped through their folders, murmuring among themselves. Nathaniel noticed their expressions shifting from skepticism to interest as they studied the numbers. "Where would production be located?" someone asked. Damien smiled. "We've identified an ideal location in Detroit's Riverside district. The area has existing industrial infrastructure and a skilled workforce needing opportunities." He didn't mention it was Nathaniel's old neighborhood. "Initial estimates suggest we could create over 300 local jobs in the first phase alone." Nathaniel's throat tightened. He thought of Mrs. Rodriguez at the corner store who had sometimes slipped him extra food, of Mr. Washington at the shelter who had helped him look for work, of countless others who had shown small kindnesses during his hardest times. "Construction could begin within 60 days, Lauren added. "We've already completed preliminary site surveys and environmental assessments." The board chairman raised his hand. "Production timeline?" "6 months to initial vehicle rollout," Nathaniel responded. "We've designed the manufacturing process to use existing equipment where possible, minimizing startup costs." More questions followed. Investment requirements, risk assessments, market positioning strategy. Nathaniel answered technical questions while Damien and Lauren handled business concerns. Victor occasionally interjected with engineering confirmations. "The prototype is available for inspection in the testing bay," Damien said finally. "Shall we take a break to examine it before voting?" The investors filed out, leaving Nathaniel alone with Damien and Lauren in the boardroom. Through the windows, he could see the distant outline of his old neighborhood. "They're impressed," Lauren said softly. The cost analysis won them over. Damien straightened his tie. "The engineering speaks for itself. But it's more than that. This project has soul. It solves a real problem for real people." In the testing bay, the investors circled the prototype like curious birds. They opened doors, studied the engine compartment, asked about specific components. Nathaniel demonstrated the hybrid system's operation, showing how smoothly it transitioned between power sources. Simple, practical, affordable. Victor summarized for the group. "Everything it needs to be, nothing it doesn't." When they returned to the boardroom, the vote was quick and unanimous. The project would move forward immediately, with a public announcement scheduled for the following week. "Congratulations," the board chairman said, shaking Nathaniel's hand. "You've designed something quite remarkable here." As the investors departed, Lauren rushed in with news. "Media outlets are already asking for details. Someone leaked that we're planning a major announcement." Through the boardroom windows, Nathaniel could see news vans pulling up to the building's main entrance. Reporters were setting up cameras on the sidewalk. "They'll want to interview you," Damien said, watching Nathaniel's expression. "You're the heart of this story." Nathaniel shook his head slightly, thinking of the shelter where he'd lived just weeks ago, of the people there who had treated him with dignity when the rest of the world looked away. "The story isn't about me," he said quietly. "It's about giving people a chance to build better lives, the same way others helped me when I needed it." Lauren touched his arm gently. "That's exactly why you should tell it." Outside, the late afternoon sun caught the camera's metal frames, sending bright flashes through the boardroom windows. More media vehicles were arriving. The story was about to break. The morning headlines hit like hammer blows. "Homeless man behind Caldwell's billion-dollar project." Questions arise about mystery engineer's background. Investors demand answers about Caldwell Automotive's new designer. Nathaniel sat in the company break room, a cup of untouched coffee growing cold in front of him. The wall-mounted TV blared as news anchors dissected his life. Sources reveal that Nathaniel Brooks, the engineer behind Caldwell Automotive's ambitious new vehicle program, has been living in homeless shelters for the past 3 years, a reporter announced. Questions are being raised about how such an individual gained access to one of Detroit's premier automotive facilities. Lauren burst into the break room, her face tight with concern. "Nathaniel, we need to move you to a private office. Reporters are gathering outside." Through the windows, he could see a growing crowd of cameras and microphones. Security guards were already setting up barriers. How did they find out? Nathaniel asked quietly. Atlas Motors leaked your background check to the press, Lauren said, her voice bitter. They're our biggest competitor in the hybrid market. They're trying to tank our stock before the project launches. It was working. On another TV channel, financial analysts were already questioning Caldwell Automotive's judgment. The company's stock has dropped 12% in early trading, a business reporter declared. Investors are expressing serious concerns about quality control and safety protocols that would allow an unvetted individual such access to proprietary technology. Victor appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. Emergency board meeting in 10 minutes. They want both of us there, Nathaniel. The executive boardroom felt colder than usual. Board members sat stone-faced around the table while a financial officer detailed the market damage. We've lost over $200 million in market value since opening, the officer reported. Major shareholders are demanding immediate action to stabilize confidence. This is ridiculous, Damien snapped. Nathaniel's work has been exceptional. His background doesn't change that. With respect, Mr. Caldwell, one board member said, it's not just about engineering quality, it's about public perception and trust. How do we explain to shareholders that we put a homeless man in charge of our flagship project? The same way we explain that he fixed my hypercar when no one else could, Damien retorted. By focusing on his abilities, not his circumstances. But the damage was spreading. Victor's phone buzzed continuously with messages from concerned engineering partners and suppliers. 3 major parts manufacturers have already put their contracts under review, Victor reported reluctantly. They're citing liability concerns. The board chairman cleared his throat. We have no choice but to suspend the project pending a full investigation. Mr. Brooks will need to step away until we can verify his complete work history and safety record. You can't do this, Damien protested. The prototype works. The design is sound. We're throwing away a breakthrough because of prejudice. We're protecting our company's reputation and shareholder value, another board member countered. The risk is simply too high. Nathaniel sat quietly through it all, his hands folded in his lap. He'd seen this before. The way people's faces changed when they learned about his homelessness, how quickly doors closed. I understand, he said softly. I'll gather my things. The workshop felt different as he packed up his tools and notebooks. Engineers who had worked alongside him just yesterday now avoided eye contact. Security guards hovered nearby, making sure he didn't take any confidential materials. Victor approached awkwardly. I'm sorry, Nathaniel. You're brilliant, but we have protocols, procedures. The board isn't wrong about the risks. Nathaniel nodded. You're protecting your life's work. I understand. Lauren helped him carry his few belongings to the lobby. Outside, reporters shouted questions. Mr. Brooks, why did you hide your homeless status? Were you qualified to work on safety-critical systems? Did you mislead Caldwell Automotive about your background? Security rushed him through the crowd to a waiting car. As they pulled away, Nathaniel caught a glimpse of the factory site plans on a billboard. Now, just another broken promise to his community. The shelter looked exactly as he'd left it weeks ago. Not receipts. Alvarez hugged him tightly when he walked in. We saw the news, she said. Don't let them shame you, Nathaniel. You did nothing wrong. But he could already feel the weight of failure settling over him. In the common room, residents watched more news coverage of the scandal. Some quickly changed the channel when they saw him. Nathaniel made his way to the small workshop corner where he used to fix bikes and appliances. His old tools were still there, waiting. A half-repaired radio sat on the workbench. I'm sorry, he whispered, to no one in particular. Sorry for believing he could rise above his circumstances. Sorry for thinking his skills were enough. Sorry for giving his community hope only to have it snatched away. He picked up a screwdriver and began working on the radio. At least here, in this small corner, he could still fix broken things, even if he couldn't fix his own shattered dreams. Outside, The evening news continued to dissect his fall from grace. But inside the shelter's walls, Nathaniel focused on the simple work before him, trying not to think about the hundreds of jobs that would never come, the families that would never get their affordable cars, the community that would remain struggling and forgotten. The radio crackled to life under his careful hands. It was a small victory, but tonight it would have to be enough. Night settled over the shelter as Nathaniel worked in his familiar corner. The small workshop space felt comforting after the sterile corporate offices. Here, at least, things made sense. A broken toaster needed fixing. A bicycle chain needed alignment. Simple problems with clear solutions. Under the warm glow of his desk lamp, Nathaniel carefully dismantled an old coffee maker that had stopped working. His borrowed business clothes were already packed away, replaced by his worn work shirt and jeans. Around him, shelter residents went about their evening routines, some nodding hello as they passed. Mrs. Alvarez appeared with a cup of tea, setting it beside his tools. She watched him work for a moment, noting how his hands moved with the same precise confidence they always had. "I saw what happened on the news," she said gently. "Do you want to talk about it?" Nathaniel adjusted a loose wire in the coffee maker. "Not much to say. Things didn't work out. They seemed excited about your ideas just yesterday. All that talk about the new factory. Sometimes things look promising until people learn who you really are." His voice held no bitterness, just quiet acceptance. Mrs. Alvarez pulled up a chair. "Who you really are is someone who helps people without asking anything in return. Someone who treats everyone with respect, no matter their circumstances. That's what I've seen every day for 3 years." A young mother approached with a broken radio, her daughter clutching a teddy bear with a loose arm. Nathaniel set aside the coffee maker and smiled at the little girl. "Let's fix your friend first," he said, reaching for his sewing kit. The girl's face lit up as he carefully stitched the teddy bear's arm back in place. Across town in his penthouse office, Damien Caldwell stared at his computer screen, scrolling through old engineering records. Lauren sat nearby, helping him piece together Nathaniel's past. "Here's something interesting," Lauren said, pointing to her tablet. 8 years ago, Nathaniel developed a breakthrough safety system for hybrid vehicles. The patent documentation is impressive. Damien leaned closer. "What happened to it?" "That's where things get unusual. 3 major manufacturers tried to buy the rights, but Nathaniel refused to sell. She pulled up more documents. They offered millions, but he wouldn't budge. Why not? That could have set him up for life." Lauren's fingers flew across the keyboard. "According to these internal memos, the companies wanted to modify the safety protocols, remove some redundancies to cut costs. Nathaniel believed that would put drivers at risk." Damien frowned. "So he walked away from the money?" "Not just the money. The companies blackballed him. His consulting contracts dried up. Look at his employment record. It drops off sharply after that." More documents filled the screen. Performance reviews, project notes, safety recommendations. A pattern emerged of someone who consistently put integrity above profit. "Here's a letter he wrote to the engineering board," Lauren said. "He warned them about companies cutting corners on hybrid battery safety. Said someone needed to stand up for consumer protection. What was the response? Nothing. The companies had too much influence. He was labeled as difficult, uncooperative." Lauren's voice softened. 3 months later, his sister got sick. Medical bills wiped out his savings. By then, no one would hire him. Damien stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city lights. He could have sold that patent and lived comfortably. Instead, he chose to protect people he'd never meet. "The safety system he designed is still considered the gold standard," Lauren added. "It's prevented countless accidents. But he never got credit for it. And now we've thrown him out because the board thinks he might damage our reputation." Damien's reflection showed disgust. "We're the ones who should be ashamed." Back at his desk, he studied a photo from that morning's news coverage. Nathaniel walking into the shelter, head held high despite everything. The same quiet dignity he'd shown when fixing the hypercar. Pull up the prototype test results, Damien said suddenly. All of them. Lauren quickly displayed the data. Every simulation, every safety check, every efficiency rating exceeded standards. The affordable vehicle design was flawless. He did all this in 2 weeks, Damien murmured. Not for glory or money. He just wanted to help people who needed reliable transportation. Like the people he lives with at the shelter, Lauren said. The ones who can't afford fancy cars. Damien picked up Nathaniel's original sketch of the simplified drivetrain. The solution was elegant, practical, and driven by genuine concern for others. We've been looking at this all wrong, he said. We weren't just getting an engineer. We were getting someone with actual integrity. And we threw him away because he was homeless. Lauren nodded toward the test results. The data doesn't lie. Every decision he made prioritized safety and reliability over flash, just like he did with that patent years ago. Even when it cost him everything, Damien said quietly. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Damien's top-floor office as Lauren organized stacks of documents across his desk. She'd been working through the night, piecing together the full story of Nathaniel's past. The safety system he designed wasn't just good, Lauren explained, pulling up technical specifications on her tablet. It was revolutionary. Look at these test results from 8 years ago. Damien leaned forward, studying the data. The numbers showed collision survival rates far above industry standards. Why wasn't this implemented everywhere? Because Nathaniel insisted on all the safety redundancies staying in place. Lauren spread out more papers. The manufacturers wanted to strip it down to cut costs. He refused to compromise. She handed him a stack of letters, correspondence between Nathaniel and major automotive companies. The tone grew increasingly hostile as Nathaniel stood his ground on safety requirements. 3 different companies tried to buy the patent, Lauren continued, combined offers worth over $12 million. He turned them all down. Damien whistled softly. That's a lot of money to walk away from. There's more. Lauren pulled up internal company memos. After he refused to sell, these same companies blacklisted him, called him difficult to work with, and unreasonably rigid about safety protocols. They made sure other manufacturers wouldn't hire him either. They destroyed his career because he wouldn't let them cut corners. Lauren nodded. Within months, his consulting contracts disappeared. Engineering firms stopped returning his calls. Then his sister got sick, and the medical bills took everything he had left, Damien finished. Outside the shelter, Nathaniel sat on an overturned milk crate, showing 15-year-old Isaiah Turner how to properly align a bicycle wheel. The boy watched intently as Nathaniel's hands made small, precise adjustments to the spokes. See how the wheel wobbles? Nathaniel demonstrated by spinning it. That means the tension isn't even. You have to balance it. Speak nice to it. Isaiah grinned. Speak nice to it? Every machine has a personality, Nathaniel explained. Some are stubborn, some are delicate. You have to learn their language. He handed Isaiah the spoke wrench. Now you try. Quarter turn at a time. Listen to how it feels. The teenager's face screwed up in concentration as he carefully turned the tool. Nathaniel nodded encouragement. That's it. Nice and easy. Feel how the metal wants to move? Isaiah's eyes widened as the wheel gradually straightened under his hands. I did it. You sure did, Nathaniel smiled. You've got good instincts. Just need practice. More neighborhood kids gathered around, watching Isaiah work. They brought their own broken bikes, hoping to learn. Nathaniel helped each one in turn, showing them basic maintenance with patient instruction. Back in his office, Damien paced as Lauren pulled up more files. Look at these accident statistics, she said. After those companies implemented their stripped-down safety systems, failure rates increased significantly. But they buried the data in technical reports. How many people got hurt? Hard to say exactly. But if Nathaniel's original system had been used, she did some quick calculations. Thousands of accidents could have been prevented. Damien stopped pacing. So his refusal to sell actually saved lives? Lives he'll never meet. And it cost him everything. Lauren's voice was quiet. He knew what would happen if he stood up to those companies. But he did it anyway. While we judged him for being homeless, Damien's jaw tightened. The board needs to see this. All of it. Lauren gathered the documentation. They're not going to like having their assumptions challenged. I don't care. Damien's voice was firm. We had a man of genuine integrity working for us, someone who sacrificed millions to protect public safety. And we threw him out because his circumstances made us uncomfortable. He looked out his window toward the shelter district. Somewhere down there, Nathaniel was probably fixing something broken, helping someone who needed it, just like he'd always done. Get me a board meeting, Damien said. This afternoon, no excuses. What are you going to tell them? The truth. He picked up Nathaniel's original patent documentation. That we were so focused on protecting our reputation, we missed the fact that the most honorable person in this company was the one sleeping in a homeless shelter. Lauren began making calls as Damien studied the safety system designs. The elegance of the engineering was matched only by the integrity of its creator. They had judged Nathaniel solely by his circumstances, never questioning how he'd ended up there. That was about to change. The Caldwell Automotive Innovations boardroom crackled with tension as 14 board members settled into their leather chairs. Afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished table, where Lauren had meticulously arranged documents in front of each seat. Damien stood at the head of the table, his usual commanding presence tempered by something new. Humility. I called this emergency meeting, he began, because we made a serious mistake. One that goes against everything this company claims to value. He nodded to Lauren, who distributed copies of Nathaniel's original safety system patent. 8 years ago, Nathaniel Brooks designed what you're now holding. A revolutionary hybrid engine safety system that could have prevented thousands of accidents. Damien picked up his own copy. 3 major manufacturers offered him millions for the patent rights. He turned them all down. Not because he wanted more money, but because they planned to remove critical safety components. Murmurs rippled through the room. Victor Langley, sitting near the middle of the table, leaned forward to study the technical specifications. The companies wanted to cut costs by eliminating redundancies, Damien continued. Nathaniel refused to compromise on safety. In response, they systematically destroyed his career. He played recorded testimony from former colleagues describing how Nathaniel had been blacklisted. The board members shifted uncomfortably as the story unfolded. When his sister became terminally ill, he had no income, no savings left. He lost everything caring for her. Damien's voice grew intense. But even homeless, living in a shelter, he never stopped helping people. Never stopped fixing things. Never compromised his principles. The public relations concerns remain valid, argued Thomas Webster, the senior board member. However admirable his past actions, his current situation creates significant image risks. Image risks. Damien laughed sharply. We're worried about how it looks to hire a homeless man, while ignoring the fact that he sacrificed millions to protect public safety? He spread accident statistics across the table. These numbers represent real people who could have been saved by his system. Lives he tried to protect at the cost of his own career. Victor stood up suddenly, surprising everyone. I was wrong about him. He faced his fellow board members. I let prejudice cloud my judgment. But look at his design work. He held up the patent documents. This is engineering genius combined with genuine ethical courage. Exactly what we claim this company represents. The affordable vehicle program is too valuable to abandon, another board member admitted. But the investors are spooked. They need reassurance. I'll personally guarantee the program, Damien declared. I'm willing to put my own capital behind it, because I believe in Nathaniel's vision, not just the technology, but what it can do for struggling communities. The board members exchanged glances. Damien had never put his personal fortune behind a project before. Furthermore, he continued, I propose making Nathaniel head of our new Community Innovation Division. His expertise in designing affordable, reliable transportation is exactly what underserved neighborhoods need. That's a significant position, Webster warned. The shareholders will have questions. Let them question. Damien's voice was firm. I'll tell them we finally found someone who embodies real corporate responsibility. An engineer who chose protecting lives over personal profit. Victor spoke up again. I'll personally oversee integration of his safety systems into our existing product lines. His work is exceptional. The room fell silent as Webster called for a vote. Hands raised one by one. It was close. 8-6 in favor of reinstating Nathaniel and proceeding with the Affordable Vehicle Program. Thank you, Damien said quietly, for seeing beyond circumstances to recognize true character. As the board members filed out, Lauren handed Damien his car keys. The shelter's across town. Traffic should be light this time of day. Damien nodded, gathering Nathaniel's original design documents. Have legal draw up a proper contract. Full benefits, competitive salary, and creative control of the community program. Already in progress, Lauren smiled. And I've reserved his old workshop space. The engineering team is excited to have him back. They should be. Damien headed for the door. We just hired the most principled engineer in Detroit. The drive across town felt different now. Damien saw the neighborhoods through new eyes, noticing the people who could benefit from reliable, affordable transportation. The communities Nathaniel had never stopped trying to help, even when the world turned its back on him. He pulled up outside the shelter just as the afternoon sun was starting to fade. Through the workshop window, he could see Nathaniel surrounded by neighborhood kids, patiently teaching them basic repair skills. Even without a formal position or payment, he was still sharing his knowledge, still helping others. Damien stepped out of his car, carrying the contract and Nathaniel's original patent documents. It was time to bring him back, not just to engineering, but to the respect and recognition he had earned through unwavering integrity. Early morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Caldwell Automotive Innovations' main workshop. Nathaniel stood in the doorway, taking in the familiar smell of metal and machinery. His borrowed work clothes had been replaced with a proper company uniform, his name embroidered above the pocket. Victor approached first, extending his hand. Welcome back. We've kept your workspace ready. Other engineers gathered around, offering genuine smiles and handshakes. The tension from before had vanished, replaced by something that felt like respect. The prototype's waiting, Lauren said, guiding him to his workstation. We didn't touch anything while you were gone. Nathaniel ran his hand along the partially assembled hybrid drivetrain. Thank you for believing in this project. We believe in you, Victor corrected, surprising everyone. Your safety patent, that took real courage. We should have seen it sooner. Damien arrived, carrying rolled blueprints for the new factory. The construction crew breaks ground next week. Want to review the layout? They spread the plans across a large table. Nathaniel studied the design, suggesting modifications to improve workflow and energy efficiency. His suggestions focused on creating a workspace that would be comfortable and dignified for the future employees. We'll need a proper training facility, Nathaniel pointed out. Many of the local residents haven't worked in manufacturing before. Already thought of that. Lauren pulled out additional drawings. We're converting the old community center into a job training hub. Classes start next month. Throughout the morning, engineers stopped by to consult with Nathaniel about various technical challenges. His quiet expertise drew them in, and soon the workspace buzzed with collaborative energy. Even those who had once doubted him now sought his input. By afternoon, Nathaniel had refined the hybrid system further, finding ways to increase durability while keeping costs low. Victor watched him work, shaking his head in admiration. You see solutions the rest of us miss, Victor admitted. It's not just technical knowledge. You understand what people actually need. Everyone deserves reliable transportation. Nathaniel replied simply, It changes what jobs they can reach, what opportunities they can access. The weeks that followed brought steady progress. Nathaniel's days filled with prototype refinements, production planning, and training program development. The factory site transformed from an empty lot into a growing structure of steel and concrete. Damien visited the construction site regularly, often bringing potential investors. But his usual sales pitch had changed. Instead of focusing on profit margins, he emphasized community impact and sustainable transportation access. "This isn't about luxury vehicles anymore," he told one group of investors. "It's about building something that actually helps people improve their lives." 3 months into construction, the training center opened its doors. Nathaniel spent evenings there, teaching basic mechanical skills to eager local residents. Many were his former neighbors from the shelter, now preparing for stable manufacturing jobs. The factory walls rose higher. Equipment arrived daily. The production line took shape under Nathaniel's careful supervision. Every detail was considered, from ergonomic workstations to natural lighting that would make the space feel welcoming. Lauren coordinated the hiring process, prioritizing local applicants. "The response has been overwhelming," she told Nathaniel. "People see real opportunity here." 6 months after breaking ground, the factory stood complete. Fresh paint gleamed in the morning sun as the newly trained workforce arrived for their first day. Nathaniel greeted each person by name, having taught many of them himself. The assembly line hummed to life. Parts moved smoothly through each station, gradually taking shape as affordable, reliable vehicles. Workers who had once struggled to find stable employment now operated sophisticated machinery with confidence. Damien watched from the observation walkway, a changed man from the impatient billionaire who had once dismissed a homeless stranger. "You've transformed more than just the technology," he told Nathaniel. "You've shown us what real innovation looks like." Near noon, the first completed vehicle approached the end of the line. Workers gathered to watch, pride evident in their faces. This wasn't just a car. It was proof that their community could build something meaningful. The vehicle's hybrid engine purred quietly as it rolled forward. Its design was simple, but dignified, built for durability rather than flash. Every component had been carefully chosen to balance cost with quality. Nathaniel stood beside the assembly line, watching the wheels turn smoothly over the concrete floor. In that moment, he saw more than just machinery. He saw the beginning of real change for his neighborhood. The car reached the end of the line, its fresh paint catching the sunlight streaming through the factory windows. The workers burst into applause, their enthusiasm echoing off the high ceiling. This was their achievement too, proof that someone had finally believed in their potential. 1 year later, the autumn sun warmed the brick walls of the Caldwell Community Training Center. What had once been an abandoned building now buzzed with activity, its renovated facade sporting fresh paint and gleaming windows. The parking lot filled with a mix of vehicles, most of them the affordable hybrids now becoming a common sight around Detroit's struggling neighborhoods. Nathaniel adjusted his tie as he stood at the entrance, greeting arriving students. His work clothes these days were nicer than the worn jacket he'd worn at the shelter, but his hands still carried the same quiet strength, marked by years of fixing whatever needed repair. "Morning, Mr. Brooks," called Marcus, one of his regular students, hurrying up the steps. The teenager had started in the youth program 3 months ago and already showed remarkable aptitude for diagnostic work. "Ready for the engine rebuild today?" Nathaniel asked, smiling at the boy's enthusiasm. "Been studying the manual all week, sir." Inside, the training center hummed with purpose. The main workshop space housed rows of engines, diagnostic equipment, and specialized tools, all designed to give students hands-on experience. Photos lined the walls, showing graduates who now worked at the factory or had started their own repair businesses. Lauren appeared, tablet in hand, reviewing the day's schedule. "The news crew will be here at 11 for the workshop opening," she reminded Nathaniel. "Damien's bringing some investors, too." "As long as they don't interrupt the classes," Nathaniel said. His priority remained teaching, not publicity. Throughout the morning, Nathaniel moved between workstations, guiding students through complex repairs. Many came from backgrounds similar to his own, people with natural talent who just needed someone to believe in them. He watched a young woman named Sarah perfectly diagnose a faulty sensor, her confidence growing with each successful repair. Around 10:30, more cars began arriving. City officials, business leaders, and media representatives gathered in the parking lot. Damien's sleek vehicle pulled up last, no longer the flashy hypercar from a year ago, but one of their own hybrid models. Damien had changed, too. The arrogant edge had softened, replaced by something more thoughtful. He greeted Nathaniel warmly, then turned to address the assembled crowd. "1 year ago, we made a promise to this community," he began, "not just to build cars, but to rebuild opportunity. Today, our factory employs over 300 local residents. Our vehicles have made reliable transportation accessible to families who never thought they could afford it. But perhaps most importantly, this training center has become a place where talent isn't wasted. It's developed." The cameras rolled as Damien officially opened the new community workshop space. The room was filled with tools and equipment, freely available to neighborhood residents who needed to make repairs. It reminded Nathaniel of his corner in the shelter workshop, but properly equipped and welcoming. After the ceremony, Nathaniel led tours through the facility. He introduced visitors to students, proudly demonstrating their skills. Sarah showed off the diagnostic system she'd mastered. Marcus explained the engine he was rebuilding. Their confidence made Nathaniel's chest tighten with pride. "You've created something remarkable here," Lauren said quietly, watching the students work. "It's not just about fixing machines anymore." "It never was," Nathaniel replied. "It's about fixing broken chances." The afternoon sun slanted through the windows as the crowd gradually dispersed. Students returned to their projects, the normal rhythm of the training center resuming. Nathaniel was cleaning up his workbench when he noticed a young teenager hovering uncertainly in the doorway. The boy couldn't have been more than 14, wearing a worn jacket several sizes too big. In his hands, he clutched a rusty bicycle chain. His eyes darted between Nathaniel and the floor, unsure whether he belonged in this clean, professional space. Nathaniel recognized that look. He'd seen it in the mirror during his own darkest days. He set down his tools and walked over slowly, careful not to startle the nervous visitor. "That chain giving you trouble?" he asked gently. The boy nodded, still not meeting his eyes. I saw the sign about the community workshop, but I don't have money for repairs." "You don't need money here," Nathaniel assured him. "Just willingness to learn." He gestured to a nearby workbench, and the boy cautiously followed. Nathaniel pulled up 2 stools and laid out a basic tool set. The chain was badly worn but fixable, like so many things that only needed proper care and attention. Nathaniel picked up a wrench, its weight familiar in his hand. He remembered countless mornings in the shelter, teaching anyone who wanted to learn. Some things hadn't changed, despite his new position. Some things shouldn't change. He turned to the boy and smiled, extending the wrench. "Let me show you how to fix it." The teenager reached for the tool, his hand trembling slightly. But as Nathaniel began explaining the repair process, that nervousness started to fade. In its place, Nathaniel saw the first flicker of something he recognized, the spark of discovering you could build something better than what life had handed you. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have hand-picked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.